Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds is a real-time strategy game set in the Star Wars universe. It most notably was developed by Ensemble Studios, the creators of the Age of Empires series, and who actually used the same engine to make Battlegrounds. So to say that the two games play quite similar to each other is an understatement. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, considering Age of Empires is a critically acclaimed game series. So why wouldn't you want the best for a Star Wars RTS? The game itself was first released on November 11, 2001, coming off the hype of Age of Empires 2 that came out a year prior. Like its medieval counterpart, Galactic Battlegrounds had a total of 5 modes for players to enjoy. These were basic training, the in-game databank, single player, multiplayer, and the scenario editor. Basic training was your usual RTS tutorial, but was done through its own little story featuring Qui-Gon Jinn working with the Wookies on Kashyyyk. It allowed players to slowly learn how to play the game, basic tutorial stuff, but at the same time experience a whole new Star Wars story. However, unfortunately, the story isn't canon anymore since Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm back in 2012, but nonetheless, it's still a small and enjoyable experience. The databank wasn't technically a playable mode, as is exactly what you expect from the name, an in-game databank. Considering gaining Star Wars knowledge wasn't as easy back in 2001 as it is today with sites like Wikipedia, this databank was always a fun time to read through, especially when I used to play the game as a kid. In single player, you had 3 options: to play specially crafted campaigns by Ensemble Studios, custom campaigns made by other players, or play a standard game against the computer. The campaigns themselves each presented an original story that players could enjoy along with voice acting. But being RTS campaigns, they all played pretty similar to each other. Start out with a small group of units, make sure your hero character doesn't die, infiltrate, rescue, try to take out enemy outposts, then eventually build your own base and try to take out the enemy base from there. Pretty much the same formula, rinse and repeat. For some reason, I always enjoyed the Trade Federation campaign, where you assumed the role of OOM-9, a droid ground commander leading the Trade Federation's actions during the blockade of Naboo. It was always interesting to see the entire perspective of the Phantom Menace from a droid's point of view. And I think still to this day, after all the Star Wars games that have come out, that this is the only campaign where you actually play as a droid. In standard single player, you could set up games with a wide range of options and play on whatever planet you ever wanted. Want to play on Naboo? Sure. Want to play on Sullust? No problem. Maps could extend from interstellar asteroids and aerial encounters all the way to submerged cities. Want to create a massive game with 8 players on an asteroid with plenty of resources enabled? All doable here. In addition, you could also play different game modes like Terminate the Commander, Commander of the Base, Monument Race, Defend the Monument, along with the standard deathmatch game type. The amount of customization that this game allows for players to make is something that I've still yet to see done in any other Star Wars RTS title, and having a lot of customization options like this is always a good thing. In Galactic Battlegrounds, you had the choice of playing with 6 factions, being the Trade Federation, the Naboo, the Wookiees, the Gungans, the Galactic Empire, and the Rebel Alliance. In a normal game, you would start off with a command center, a scout, and 3 workers. You would then need to search and gather resources such as food, carbon, nova crystals, and ore, all which allow you to create new buildings, units, workers, and so on. Sounds a lot like Age of Empires, right? Yeah, because that's exactly what it is. And if you already played Age of Empires before, it just makes getting into Galactic Battlegrounds that much more easier. Now, there are a total of 7 military structures in the game. These are the Troop Center, the Shipyard, the Mech Factory, the Jedi or Sith Temple depending on your faction you choose, the Heavy Weapons Factory, the Air Base, and the Fortress. The Troop Center produces all your cannon fodder early game units, like Stormtroopers for example. The Shipyard produces ships, like actual ships that sail in the water, which is interesting as you never really see such things in Star Wars. The Mech Factory produces scouts, assault mechs, strike mechs, and mech destroyers. Basically, this is where you build your heavy-duty tank units like AT-ATs. The Air Base produces aircraft like fighters, bombers, and transports. And the Heavy Weapons Factory produces pummels, artillery, and anti-air mobiles, which in short are the big guns needed to mount a full-scale assault. The fortress serves as a defensive structure and produces both your faction's unique unit and a bounty hunter, which are good against Jedi or Sith. As well, the fortress can also create great long-range cannons and a massive air cruiser. Finally, you got the Jedi or Sith Temple, which produces Jedi Padawans or Sith apprentices that can be later trained to Jedi or Sith Knights. You can also create Jedi and Sith Masters, but for some reason they can't be upgraded from the Knights. The Jedi and Sith are fantastic units to have in your army and have a whole slew of different upgrades available to them, such for example converting more than one unit during a battle. These Jedi and Sith temples can also hold Holocrons, which if you find and collect all the Holocrons on the map and keep them in your temple for 200 in-game days, then you'll automatically win the game. You could do that or build a faction-specific monument and let it stand for 300 in-game days, in order to easily win a game. Although of course these monuments are very expensive to build and essentially make you a big target to be attacked by every player in the game. But of course these are only alternative ways to win games, as the main aim of the game is to build up an army and lay waste to your opponent's base by means of brute force, as is usually the case with RTS games. Galactic Battlegrounds also features online multiplayer, with games still able to be played on LAN or through direct IP connections. Back when Galactic Battlegrounds first came out, the online multiplayer service was carried out by MSN Zone Gaming, which retired its support back in 2006. To this day, there's still a small but active community that plays Galactic Battlegrounds online through such services like GameRanger and Voobly. Lastly, the Scenario Editor, which was always my favorite mode to play as a kid, as basically you can create anything here. The possibilities were almost endless. If you wanted to, you could put Luke Skywalker on the dark side to command an army of stormtroopers. Or you can go weirder and make Palpatine the leader of the Rebel Alliance. It was always so much fun, and I remember creating far too many stupid scenarios as a kid, even saving some to later take into multiplayer, which I would play together with my brother. I think that's why I really loved this game as a kid, as I could give life to my Star Wars fantasies and then watch them unfold before my eyes. A year after its release, Galactic Battlegrounds got an expansion pack called the Clone Campaigns, that released just 2 days before Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones was shown at the Cannes Film Festival on May 14, 2002. The expansion introduced 2 new playable factions in the CIS and the Galactic Republic, as will complete new campaigns for each. Not only was the expansion great for adding new factions, units, essentially several new ways to play, but it was also a fun teaser for the movie and our actual first taste of the Clone Wars, as the new campaign missions occurred during the first 2 months of the Clone Wars, and it was always fun to see how the story continued after watching Episode 2 back in 2002. Although it still kinda disappointed me that we never got to see a second expansion pack, this time based off Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, as I wouldn't mind having the Phase 2 clones, even more new units and campaigns to play. But I get why they never did this, as they wouldn't be able to add a new faction, especially if that was part of the expectation set upon the new expansion pack if it were to come out. Which, if based off Episode 3, then yeah, that wouldn't really work. Now, I know some people didn't like the fact that Galactic Battlegrounds ran on the Genie engine, and called it out for being an Age of Empires reskin. But in all honesty, that's like calling Star Wars Battlefront a Battlefield reskin, because it runs on the Frostbite engine and it's a shooter game. Of course, Galactic Battlegrounds and Age of Empires share a lot of similarities, but in the end, Battlegrounds is far more deeper and offers so much more game changers such as air units, blasters, the ability to add shields to your base, and more. And we can't forget about mod support, as Galactic Battlegrounds has that going for it as well. With the ever popular Expanding Fronts mod, it not only adds widescreen and 60 FPS support, but also adds several new factions to the game like the Geonosians and the Zan Consortium, along with a ton of other new units and buildings to play around with. In 2019, there's no other way I could imagine to play this game without the Expanding Fronts mod. I highly recommend it. Overall, Galactic Battlegrounds is a blast for Star Wars RTS fans, and even to this day it still remains as my favorite Star Wars game. My only real wish is that Galactic Battlegrounds sees an HD remake like Age of Empires 2 did, or even have a 3D successor come out. But for the time being, you definitely can't go wrong with this classic. I grew up with Galactic Battlegrounds, and when I think of Star Wars games, Galactic Battlegrounds is the first thing that comes to my mind for me. What can I say, I love the RTS genre, and when you throw Star Wars into the mix, well done, you got yourself a winner. This is N7 from Silo, signing off.